Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Phat Muscle Project podcast. I'm John Gorman, one of your hosts today. We got Lisa Franz in the house. Lisa, how are you? It's almost Christmas time. How are things over in your world?
I am very well. I actually had a little bit of a cold, and I'm mentioning this particularly because the last time that I was sick was like 5 or 6 years ago. It was actually a really great reminder of how grateful I am for my body and my health usually and my good immune system. And it was very humbling. And I was like, I am gonna have to take an entire week off of training and just taking things easy. And I'm not used to that, obviously.
It's that time of year. I literally just took 5 days off because I had a sore throat and just congestion. I'm still a little congested now, but I'm fine. I'm back here at work. But I don't care how long we've been doing this, taking five, six, seven a week off the gym. I feel like I'm fat ass John after
I
like
know.
4 days.
I can absolutely relate, but it is good every now and then to be like reminded of the simple things where you're just like, oh, I can breathe without having stuff in my nose. This is amazing. And I can
Yeah.
work out without having a headache or something. So yeah, it is. It's just simple things.
Yeah, it is. And it's also one of those things, we've got to walk our clients off the ledge. We have to walk ourselves off the ledge too. But
That too.
I woke up this morning, looked at myself in the mirror. I'm like, I literally look zero different. You know what I mean? Like nothing bad has happened. It's just mentally, we want to get to the gym, but it's just that time of year. And it's better that we don't go quote unquote spread the love, right? We
Yeah.
don't want to go spread the sickness, especially with the flu going around. That's just awful. And then, this is not our topic today, but when you train when you're sick, you literally extend out your sickness because your
That
body can't
is it.
recover as fast. So anyway, people are listening are like, I don't want to hear it.
But I think this actually fits quite well into our topic because we're talking about take or not into our topic, but into this phase of the year because some people might have to take a few days off of training for travel to relatives, etc. And I guess just a good reminder that taking a few days off here and there is not gonna make a difference as long as you're usually consistent. Yeah, I think that's often easily forgotten over the holidays. And over the holidays, we also think about the new year already and thinking about diets and many people going into diets. But we actually want to talk about how to get out of a diet the correct way today.
Yeah, we were talking, we literally changed this right before we started recording to make this a two-part series because everyone's getting ready to start their diet, right? It's just that time of year. And we're going to talk about why it's important to recover, like you said, to recover from your last dieting phase to set you up to diet. So this is going to go real well in January. It'll be two parts, and I'm excited to dive in. What's cool is we can as coaches, we can share different perspectives too. Whether it's male, female, Gen Pop, maybe some higher level athletes, like this is going to cover everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so I mean, let's dive right into it. Why is it important that before we even start the diet, we started from a place of that sets us up for success?
Yeah, so one of the things, the first book I wrote, it's called Metabolic Capacity and Reverse Dieting. Wow, it's been exactly 10 years ago. I wrote it in 2015 and it immediately became an Amazon bestseller. And the point of the book was how to set your metabolism up to be able to get you to diet the correct way or the healthiest way possible. And what people don't realize, so if it's January now and someone's listening to this, they're wanting to start a diet, how you recover or how you come back after your last diet or how close it is to your last diet depends on the success of the diet you're about to start. So I'll give people a perfect example. Whether you're a competitor or not doesn't matter. Dieting is length of time is dieting. So if you've someone that just got done dieting all through the summer and into the early fall, and it's only been like 2 or 3 months since you dieted off 20 pounds, and we're going to go into all the details here, if you gained weight back and now you're just trying to hurry up and turn around and lose it again, you haven't spent enough time away from that dieting phase to get your hormones back to normal, to speed your metabolic rate back up. It's the definition of yo-yo dieting. You gain weight, you hurry up and go back on the diet. And it sets people up to not be successful. We want to fix that today. So that's why it's super important. We want to help everyone avoid the pitfalls. And Lisa, as coaches, we pick this out from our clients when they apply to us, right? I always ask, hey, when was your last diet or what are your current calories? So I have to make sure all these things are placed because especially a competitor, somebody that's just stepped on stage, if they did a show like in September and they want to turn around and do a show in March, I'm literally going to turn that person away
Hmm.
because their metabolic rate is not sped up enough to support another prep like that. You have to spend time away from dieting, but we'll go into all those details.
Yeah, and I think you're so good at that, at like talking to your clients about, hey, no, we need to actually take like a long off season. And whether we're talking about competitors or not, it really doesn't matter. We have to ensure that we're starting the diet from a proper position, because otherwise, exactly like you say, it's just going to be more frustrating. If it's successful at all, we're gonna do more quote unquote damage to the hormones and everything else also. So this is super, super important. And unfortunately, I think quite often people want to hear a specific number, like, oh, you have to be at maintenance or in a small surplus or whatever for 3 months, for 4 months. You can't give a specific number like that. It really depends on how long the person was dieting beforehand and also their own individual metabolism. Like if that was the first time they've ever dieted, and then their off season doesn't have to be as long, very likely, as someone who has gone in and out, in and out, in and out of various different diets. And I think we just need to be patient, and people just need to see like, okay, where are your labs at? How are you feeling? How are your hunger cues? Because that's really a big point. It's not just about the physiology; it's also about the mental aspects of like how much has the past diet affected you right now? So yeah, I think that those are some really great points to talk about. And so in which cases, I guess, I mean, this is going to be something that we talk about more in the second part also. But let's just walk through the whole steps. When you finish the diet with somebody, um, in order to get to that recovery phase, how do you choose if you're just doing like a slow and steady reverse diet or if you're doing a recovery diet, you as a coach?
So it really the difference between the two. So just a slow, steady reverse diet would just be systematically adding carbs in like maybe every week or two in smaller amounts, right? Maybe 20 carbs every 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever. That's kind of a lower amount. We'll talk about why that's important. Or a recovery diet is when you skyrocket calories really fast. The way I look at it, it depends on two things. One, how harsh was the diet? So when I put someone on stage, that's a harsh diet. Hormones are crashed, their calories are really low, their body fat's really low. To get someone to recover, you've got to put body fat back on and get calories up pretty fast. So with that person, I'm not necessarily going to add 20 carbs every 2 weeks. They're literally going to eat off the plan and be adding calories anyway. So a recovery diet is more for the harsher the diet, the more a quote unquote recovery diet is important, right? So I'll give you an example. One of my athletes, Karen Lika, she competed this year and last year, but this year we put her into a recovery diet phase and she stepped on stage. She won her pro bikini class in a Kansas City show. And she got down to, I believe it was like 120 pounds flat. And right after the show, I was like, hey, like we do not need to mess around with this. Let's get 8 to 10 pounds on you pretty quickly. And she's at like 129 to 131 now, a couple months after the show. And we got her up there quickly. It
Awesome.
did two things. One, her cycle came back, by the way, pretty quickly. I think it was 4 to 5 weeks it came back.
Amazing.
I'd have to look back at my notes, so I'm old and going off memory, but that was the first sign, hey, we're doing something right. And not everyone loves to gain body fat when they step off stage that fast because mentally you're used to seeing all these shreds and all this kind of stuff. But I always tell people, remember how shitty you feel when you're that lean. So
Hmm.
like that's how everybody wants to look that way, but don't forget how hungry you are and how shitty you feel. So that was a recovery diet. And her calories were, well up into the lower 2000s from, I think we got down to 1300 at the end. So
Wow.
you see, I got her there pretty quickly, probably in about 4 weeks.
Mhm.
And she also had meals off plan, and that was part of it. She's married, got a husband. They like to go to Chiefs games and do all this. I'm like, hey, this is perfect for the recovery diet. So that's a time when I will do that. Um, when I want to do a slower reverse is if I have male or female, doesn't matter. I'll just say someone that's not competing, Gen Pop, whatever, dad that wants to lose, 20 pounds. And we went ahead and lost 20 pounds over the course of, I don't know, 12 to 16 weeks, probably 12 weeks for a guy. Got him there. I'm probably going to add back in, 30 carbs every week to 2 weeks. And that's not slow, but I'm not going to go add a bunch of other food, right? Because I didn't get him to the point where his body fat was super low and his calories were super low. So I might take him from 2,200 calories at the end up to 28, 2,900 in a couple months, and he's maintaining that leaner physique, and he's walking around at, a free meal or two a week and 3,000 calorie average, and he's trying to hold on to that leaner physique, right? Because it's maintainable. That's when I systematically reverse people up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think those are some wonderful examples. And what I was going to add also is to the aspect of what I mentioned earlier in regards to mentally that reverse diet or that recovery phase being so important. I think you even wrote about that too, that after a diet, our body literally in various ways is sending us signals to gain the weight back faster. And so if we the point that I want to make is that if we do yo-yo cycles, then not just most of the time we are actually gaining more weight back if we're just eating intuitively and not watching our macros and so on. And so like the people that do exactly what you mentioned, that like diet and then gain weight back but don't wait long enough, and then diet and gain back the weight but don't wait long enough, they usually kind of almost like they add more fat cells as they go, and their
Yes.
metabolism takes more of a hit as they go. Would you agree with that?
It's a real interesting concept. Body fat overshooting
Yeah, that
is, I
one.
think, another term, right? And it's
Yeah.
actually been researched and studied. I can't remember some of the studies. It's been like 7 or 8 years ago. I remember Lane, my friend Lane Norton, was posting about it, and I read about body fat overshooting, and I'm like, well, I've been seeing this as a coach in the trenches for a long time. So people actually diet themselves fatter,
Yes.
and I believe what happens is there's no research to prove this, but when someone's, if someone, we see it a lot more in females, typically because you all have more pressure to look a certain way than guys. We're okay being a little bigger. We fill this shirt out. It's okay. So females, you guys have so much pressure on you. I see more yo-yo dieting in my female clients
Yeah.
where they'll lose 30 pounds, but then mentally they've restricted themselves so much, and then they rebound and they overeat and they kind of have more eating disorders than guys do. And then they gain all the weight back, but their metabolic rate's still so slow because what I see them doing is trying to go real low calorie to offset eating off the plan.
Yes.
So they're spending 4, 5, 6 days very low calorie, high cardio, and then they binge and eat really high for one day a week. Well, they're keeping their metabolism slow for 6 days, and then one day all that food is literally storing, and then they're keeping their metabolic rate slow because then they turn around and try and diet it back off, and it doesn't work. So they end up dieting themselves fatter, and it's very scary. I've got ways to get around that. It's a whole other podcast. I know you do it as well when you reverse people to get them healthy. But yeah, that's body fat overshooting. It's a very real thing.
Yeah, I really just wanted to drive that point home of like how important that recovery phase really, really is from various aspects, from that body fat overshooting, from the how your next diet will go point as well. And so when you say a recovery phase dictates how the next diet will go, what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, as far as time frames, you were 100% spot on. You can't tell someone, hey, if you dieted, 30 pounds off, you need to stay in a recovery phase and get your metabolic rate up for 6 months. Like you can't do that. There's a rule of thumb you can apply, and then you have to pay attention and make sure that you're recovered, right? So an easy rule of thumb to apply, I guess it's not really a rule because everyone's so different, but if you diet for 3 months, reverse diet up and recover for 3 months. If
Mhm.
you diet for 6 months, make sure you're not dieting again for 6 more months, right? Get there and then assess everything. assess your labs, like assess how you feel, all these things that you talked about mentally. Are you okay with food? Are you having issues with food? Is your hunger sky high? There's so many things to measure, but to me, the ultimate goal is to get where at least I believe you and I are actually in the spot where I would love to see all of our clients. We can eat, we don't obsess about food. We can intuitively eat and maintain our weight. We can do all these things, and our health is in a good spot. That to me is, when you're recovered, when also mentally you're at that point too. But, typically you can kind of marry those up. However long you dieted, spend that long at least recovering. And that doesn't mean it's time to diet again. That just means that you're probably in a state to where if you need to drop 2 or 3 pounds because you've got a wedding coming up and you can't fit into that dress, that's okay. You diet off the 3 to 5 pounds. But that's kind of what I like to see as far as recovery.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in terms of where people might be able to gauge how long it could take. I do usually think or say, and this is for non-competitors, but think and say that 2/3 of the year, ideally, if not, yeah, like a 2/3 of the year should be spent at maintenance or above. I would like to see that. But yeah, all the biomarkers, really keeping track of that is really, really helpful. I do think that it is very helpful having a coach assess when you're ready to get back into a diet because we're so easily swayed by our own thoughts of like, oh, I've had 2, 3 days where I wasn't really hungry and I'm feeling fat. I want to go back into dieting, where you're like, girl, you're just ovulating. That's why you're feeling fat. Your weight's probably gonna drop in, 2 days time. And also just because you had 2 days where you felt super energized in the gym doesn't mean that after that, even though it's only been 10 weeks after your last diet, you can go back into a deficit. So yeah, sometimes those voices in our head really kind of take over.
Yeah, and then from the competitor side, that's a much different answer, right? Because, competitors, I try and break it down this way. And I've got to remember people listening to the podcast, not everyone's heard this, even though I've said this a zillion times. I have to remember there's new people here. So when you diet for a show, when you're done, your markers are almost always trashed.
Mhm.
Testosterone's low, thyroid hormone's lower. For females, progesterone's probably going to be tanked, right? Like those things are all lower. Well, it takes typically for most people 4 to 5 months to get those hormones back to normal. So if you dieted from January to May and you stepped on stage in May, now you're looking at that's month 5. Now you're looking at October, hoping that your hormones are back to normal by October.
Mhm.
During that time from May, the end of your show, until October, as your hormones are starting to come back up, you're not putting on new muscle. Like you might be able to get your metabolic rate sped up, but your hormones are improving. You're actually not making improvements to your physique
Mhm.
most of the time. There are outliers. There are people that can do it. But for most people, us mortals, you're just going to be in a recovery phase. So now you've got, say you're healthy in October. By the time January rolls around, that's only 2 months. Most people turn around and start their diet again. They're like, hey, it's January. I want to do another show in May like I did last year. Maybe it's the same show. You've only had 2 months to try and improve your physique. That's where I see people mess up. And
Mhm.
sometimes their hormones aren't back to normal by October. Then they turn around and try and diet by January. They're completely in a bad state and their physique doesn't look as good. They don't get as lean and they tank their hormones so much on that next prep. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And that's where, at Premier U, our clinic that we have, we fix that nonstop. I try to avoid it as a coach and I try and coach my people through it. But I have so many clients that come to me, they're already tanked. Well, I'm like, I can't get them there. So that's why we started Premier U. So I'm like, I need a place for my people to go. That
Mhm.
way we can get them there. And that's the dangerous side. So it's a long answer for the more time off that you can spend as a competitor, the better. I love to see for natural people spend at least 2 years away from the stage.
Mhm.
If you're an assisted competitor, whatever that means in your world, a year off, a year and a half off, that's still going to help you improve. But natural, the longer you can spend off season, the better. I saw like Leslie spent 4 years off season from 2014 to 2018. Her physique looked insanely different. Where from 2010 to 2014, she was dieting every year.
Mhm.
So like her gains were insane from 2014 to 2018.
I think you said something really important there also for Gen Pop. The longer you can spend in your off season, the more successful your next dieting phase is going to be. I don't think people hear that enough. And I think even though it sounds so logical after what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, but still, I don't think it sinks through. Like if you want your weight loss phase to be as short as possible and as, motivating and like feeling as good as possible, just wait for the right moment. Don't rush into it just because right now you're feeling kind of antsy. But yeah, that's some a really good or important point that competitors really have to look at the labs. I think with Gen Pop we can rely quite a bit more on biomarkers if we don't have all the labs. Nonetheless, my question to you is, what are some good markers that we want to look at with all of that?
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and taking notes, or you want to come back to this and take notes, here are the ones off the top of my head I like to make sure are in a good range. First of all, let's start with thyroid hormone. So TSH, I like to see that at 2.0 or below. You don't want it to be up into the twos, especially the threes and fours, because that means your thyroid's working very hard. So the higher the number, the worse. And it's also a sign of hypothyroidism. So 2.0 or below for your TSH. T4 like that, it's going to come with it. I don't look at that so much as I do as your free T3. That's basically your circulating thyroid hormone. I like to see that at least a 3.0 or above before someone starts a diet. If it's like 2.2, that means your metabolism is very slow. Your actual working metabolic rate is going to be slow. That's going to make dieting very hard. I'm going to throw a real quick supplement out. I mean, people to understand we're not just trying to sell supplements on here, but our new ThyroBoost Plus from New Ethics has glandulars in it. It is freaking amazing. I fixed so many labs with ThyroBoost Plus for people that just can't get that free T3 up. So, if you're somebody that has a 3.5 free T3, you don't need to take it, by the way. So like don't just pile it on there. But during a dieting phase, adding that in helps. So those are the markers with the thyroid I like to look at. Reverse T3 is another one. I like to keep that ideally 12 or below. But if it's higher, if it's like 14, 19, I've seen like 25s. What that is that's a sign of high stress. So when your reverse T3 is, say, 19, what your body is doing, it's saying, hey, you're stressed. So it takes your free T3, your metabolic rate, and it makes the non usable reverse T3 to try and slow your body down. So if your T3 is lower, your reverse T3 is probably a little higher. That's things like the unsexiness of make sure you get enough sleep, don't drink alcohol, use some New Ethics Cordy's, 2 caps before bed, use a sleep aid if you need to, like do these things and the lifestyle habits to help drive cortisol down, right? That's an important one. The hormones that are super important are progesterone for females. If your progesterone is bottomed out, and you have to look at all the phases, we're not going to go into those now, but typically you'll see one marked like 0.5 or lower for progesterone. For ladies, that's important because if your progesterone's low, your sleep quality is going to suck. So naturally, you can fix that by taking our chasteberry liposomal product and a sleep aid, so you get better sleep. But if your progesterone's low, it's just hard to get good sleep. And then sometimes just even getting hormone replacement therapy, 100 or 200 milligrams of progesterone at night before bed, especially if you're in menopause, that just helps with sleep. Totally nothing wrong with that. Estrogen, I don't really worry about too much unless it's really high, which we do see from time to time, but it's not really one that I worry too much about. Testosterone is important. So, especially if someone's going to diet, if your testosterone is low, not so much your total being low, but your free testosterone. If that's low, that means your body's ability to recover after the workouts is compromised, which means cortisol is going to stay high. And you're also going to lose muscle as you diet, which slows your metabolic rate. As you lose muscle tissue, your body has to slow its metabolic rate down. Because if you lost 20 pounds, even just losing weight in general, if you lose 20 pounds, if your metabolic rate doesn't slow down to compensate with it, and your body fat goes down and your muscle tissue goes down a little bit, and your thyroid hormone stayed the same, your body temperature would actually rise, which it's impossible. Like your body is too smart. We can't outsmart it.
Mhm.
So I say all of that to say, those are really the ones to look at. I'm probably leaving out a couple things that are important, but those are like the big ticket items where you're like, okay, if these aren't right, it's probably not time to start a diet. So then a lot of coaches worry. Like they're like, well, I don't want to turn away a client. No, this is where you learn how to help that client. You help get them healthy so you can diet them. Where a lot of coaches are like, oh, yeah, I'll diet you. And they turn a blind eye to it. And you're actually really going to mess them up. They're going to mess their health up.
Yeah, and I think we always have to think long term as coaches as well, because if you make that client healthy, if you educate them along the way why they have to wait, and I mean, maybe 50% of people will go and work with a different coach, and that's fine. But if you get that client feeling better and then you give them a successful dieting phase afterwards when the time is right, again, I've said it before, but you have a client for life if you manage to do that. Whereas
100%.
if you screw up someone's metabolism by dieting them too early, and let's remember, they're probably not even going to be successful in that dieting. If the weight comes up, it comes off a lot slower. They're going to feel like shit along the way, maybe even resulting into that whole yo-yo cycle again. They're gonna
Yeah.
stop working with you after that because it's not a successful phase. So, yeah, long-term thinking, I like that you pointed that out. So you kind of gave us a little bit of a hormone checklist there. Do you have a like generally a pre-diet checklist where you would say like if the client ticks all these marks, then we're ready to go?
Yeah, I bet you and I probably have the same checklist, just even in our mind. It's, make sure that if you're going to start a diet, you don't want to start a diet when your life's a dumpster fire, right? And like right now, mine's not a dumpster fire because that sounds negative, but mine is crazy. Like I've got 5 businesses, we've got people out sick. Jacob just had his baby 2 weeks early, which healthy baby, everybody's good, but I'm like doing all these things, got all this stuff piled on me. If I do not need to start a diet right now, like my stress is so high. So if you're going through a divorce, like that's tough, right? Like to start a diet when you're doing something like that, or you just got fired, or you've got family drama, or just your sleep is compromised, right? Like all those things, you have to make sure that you're set up to where I tell people this all the time. When you diet, balance is very low. Balance is for the off season. Balance is for maintaining. Balance is for getting your health back. If you're going to diet, it takes a lot of sacrifice. Like you need to prep your food. You need to turn down the food at the Christmas parties, right? Or at least select something that's somewhat close and eyeballable, intuitively eat, but you can't just go blow it out.
Yeah.
So balance goes down. You have to make sure that everything is set up to where your balance is going to be low, but you're able to handle that. If not, you're setting yourself up for a disaster and you're just going to spin your wheels. So there's a lot of that stuff on top of the healthiness, right? And then finally, making sure your calories, probably the most important thing, making sure your calories are in a good place to create a deficit. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on as a coach in like 2010 is, I would do Leslie's diet. Poor girl, like her and I have learned so much from each other just by messing each other up, right? Like we would keep her at 1,200 calories in the off season because she was gaining fat after her shows. And I didn't know. I thought, well, God, to avoid fat gain, I need to keep my calories low. I didn't understand by keeping calories slow, you kept your metabolic rate and your hormones down, right? So making sure that we got her up to 1,800 calories, 2,000 calories. Then when it was time to diet, I could drop her down to 1,500 and we could start dropping a pound a week, right? But if I kept her at 1,200
Where do
and
you
she
go?
was yeah, exactly. Nowhere except for hormones in the toilet and easier fat gain. She prepped with another coach. I won't say his name, back in 2011 because I just didn't know what to do at that point. And he put her on 800 calories, 2 hours of cardio, and had her eating these massive refeeds on Sundays. He didn't know either, right? Like none of us knew back then. Like this was like 2011. We started to learn about this in 2012, right? Um, but yeah, you got to make sure that you've got enough room to create a deficit.
That's a really, really important last point. And so, yeah, from there, I do want to talk about what people can expect or should expect also mentally a little bit from a recovery phase. You already touched on quite a lot of them in the sense of more energy for training, being happier, sleeping better, etc. One point, I mean, this is more to the point of like when people just come out of a diet, so more recovery phase, and the initial reverse diet. But and I think we've spoken about this before, but I observe it quite often that actually in that time hunger goes up, and often people are not prepared for that. And if
Yeah.
at that stage they try to eat intuitively, they would put on way too much weight way too quickly. So I always caution people in that initial phase. We're not talking about the maintenance recovery phase. We're talking about the initial phase where actually hunger can be higher than in a diet. Do you see that too?
Oh yeah, it's it to me, my clients tell me it's the hardest part
Wow.
because being hungry when you're shredded, like that's there because your body fat is low and that you don't get the signal leptin to your brain that says, "Hey, I'm full." So like as you're lean, leptin is a lower secreted hormone. So you eat and you get less leptin that says, "Hey, I'm full." So being hungry is part of being shredded. Like that does not go away. The other side of hunger is when you speed your metabolic rate up. It's actually a good sign. It's a good sign that you being hungry is good, but it's really hard to turn that off, especially when you have not felt full for a long time. So you just came from eating poverty macros where you're eating, 1,300 calories or a guy's eating 1,800 and you're eating more food, but your hunger is like this furnace. And it's a healthy thing, but it's very hard to shut off because the mental component is there. And you've been dieting for so long. You're just like, it's so easy just to keep eating. We've all been there. Don't beat yourself up. Like we're all human. That's what dieting does to us. So, yes, I think it's very hard.
Yeah, I do think like having that conversation with our clients beforehand and just prepping them for like, hey, here are your first refeed macros, but just keep in mind you're gonna be hungrier, and this is not the time to slack off yet when we are at maintenance. Exactly like you said, you can have your free meals, you can have your, when you go to the baseball game or whatever, and have your hot dogs and all that, the rest of it. But in that initial phase, if you don't want the weight to come back or come back to way too quickly, do still be diligent in that reverse diet. And I think
Yeah.
from the other mental aspect, it's hard that you've already achieved your goal. So it's easy to stay diligent and to be adherent to the plan when you're like, oh, I'm so close to the goal. I'm so close to the goal. I can see it. But you've already achieved that. That's kind of like that whole Olympian syndrome where people fall into a little bit of a hole afterwards, or even comparing it to someone's getting married and they're like, before that, they're super able to stay diligent or to like, they're excited about the wedding. And then they kind of fall into that post-wedding blues where it's like, oh, what
Mm.
now? What do I do with my life? And it's kind of the same thing after a diet. But yeah, this is not the time to slack off.
And I think you do a better job with this than probably anybody I know. I would put Leslie up there, but I think you're probably the best at this. Keeping your fiber in, you preach that, you show it yourself, like you post pictures of food that you're eating, and I always notice that it's very balanced. But I think this is a point to where if people can follow your page and watch your page, this is the kind of food I think people should eat in the recovery phase because it has more volume, has plenty of fiber to slow gastric emptying. It's going to keep you fuller longer. That doesn't mean you have to pound fiber. But this is not the time to eat the flexible dieting if it fits your macros foods because your hunger's high. And I'm telling you, you can crush cereal and pancakes and all that stuff like very quickly. And that stuff adds up very fast. So I think fiber is probably one of the most underutilized keys to success. And as your calories go up, your fiber needs to go up too, right? So like if you were
Absolutely.
dieting, eating 25 grams of fiber a day, if you're a guy in the off season, you probably need to be up at 35, you know?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, no, thank you
yeah.
for acknowledging that. I do think that it definitely contributes to me feeling satiated most of the time, and overall just having, good digestion and all the rest of it. But I totally agree with you. So I guess, do you have any examples, or what would you say, um, would constitute a recovery phase gone wrong, or is there even such a thing?
Yeah. So this is, I guess I want to talk about where I need to do a recovery diet with somebody, but I only add in calories systematically. So I do a more traditional reverse. There's a lot of times after a diet to where somebody is going, they eat off plan. And I just try to get them out of it as a coach. I'm like, hey, listen, if you're eating off plan, tell me because I need to add calories. But if you're adding them on your own and you can't stay out of the pantry 2 or 3 nights a week, if I add fast calories to that, you're going to gain way too much fat, and that's that body fat overshooting. So that's a recovery diet gone wrong. That's when you've got to slow down, wait until you get a baseline in weight, get them to eat, calories, or if this is you listening, eat your calories for a week straight and see what your baseline is. Then add some calories to that. But if you're still eating off the plan every, couple times a week or more, you are adding calories back. So you don't necessarily need to add calories during the day. It just takes time. If that's you and you're struggling mentally, it takes time to get through that. Just know that the longer you spend going through it, getting it out of your system, you just want to try and minimize it as much as you can. Just don't go back on the dieting calories. Don't drop your calories and try and diet that back off. Just know mentally you're going to get there. It's a tough spot, I feel, for people. It's why I don't diet for shows. If I'm going to be completely honest, there's two reasons I don't diet for shows anymore, and I haven't really. I got close in 2014, but it's that I don't want to deal with the issues I have with food after that. So like any dieting that I do now, it's probably an 8 to 12 week diet. I'll drop 7 to 8 pounds, clean up my labs. I'm healthy. I maintain where I'm at, and I don't have an issue with food. If I go beyond that, I mentally have an issue with food. I'm just going to gain the weight back. So like we're all human, we're all normal. Give yourself a little grace and just try to get through it.
Yeah, I think that that definitely would be in my eyes the point where I would say the recovery diet has gone wrong too much if people do just want to slash their calories way too much or mess with their own calories. I also sometimes have seen it, unfortunately, where people just go MIA. So even if they are coaching in that time, you like for a few weeks you don't hear from them at all, and that's not a good sign. Like I'll do my part as a coach. I'll still send out reminders or even a text of like, hey, what's going on? Just give me a thumbs up. You don't need to fill in a full check-in or whatever. But then you don't hear from them at all. And then 2 months later, they're like, oh, I stopped training completely and I didn't track anything and I just feel like shit. And then you're like, well, I have no data. I don't really know what's been going on. This is still
Yeah.
not the time. First, let's just establish maintenance again. And on that point, I really think people don't understand, truly don't understand the value of coaching in a maintenance phase enough. They always think
Yeah.
there's only point of having a coach when I'm in a cut or when I'm wanting to put on muscle or like in a surplus. No, in a maintenance phase, very, very, very few people can actually maintain their weight, and that is exactly where coaching would be needed the most, in my opinion. But
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. So I know that ends part one. This part two is how to actually set your macros up, your calories up. We'll talk about how much to lose each week, how much cardio to do. It'll be a short podcast, but we're going to go ahead and end this soon. You guys stay tuned for part two. For myself and Lisa, we're out of here. Hope you guys have a Merry Christmas.